In this video, we are going to go over how to simplify numerical expressions with exponents and negative signs involved. In the later part of the video, we'll go over how to basically evaluate algebraic expressions, variables, where there are negative numbers involved. Let's dive right into this. So I've given you a pretty common, comparison between two different types of numerical expressions that look very similar. How do we evaluate these? Well, always follow your order of operations, right? Which is your parentheses, then your exponents, multiplication or division, addition or subtraction. So why might that come into play here? Let's see. This is read the opposite of 4 squared. In terms of the order of operations, you do your exponents first before you do multiplication. And basically, you can look at this as if it is -1 times 4 squared. Now, I don't expect you to actually write it that way, but you can certainly think of this problem as that. So we do the exponents first. So 4 squared is 16 times -1, or the opposite of positive 16 is -16. Notice here that that negative is not a part of the base. It is not raised to the second power. That's where this is a little bit different here. Here we've got -4, all in parentheses, squared. That means that the negative is part of what is being raised to the second power. So we would write this out, or think of it as -4 times -4, which is equal to negative times a negative is a positive 16. And so you see, you end up getting a positive here, whereas we get a negative there. Another way of looking at this, we could have expanded this out as -1 times and then 4 times 4. And you see that we only have the one negative value. Very cool stuff. Now, we're going to look at what happens when we've got an odd power. We just had an even power, now let's look at an odd power. Here we have -2 raised to the third power. Well, that's going to be -2 times -2 times -2. Again, notice the negative is within the parentheses, so the exponent applies to it as well as it does to the 2. So this whole thing is the base. So we'd have -2 times -2 times -2. Simplifying that out, you get -2 times -2 is +4, times -2 is -8. In this problem here, we have, literally the way that I'm thinking of it is the opposite of 2 times 2 times 2. And again, you could think of that as -1 times 2 times 2 times 2. Well, this would be 2 times 2 is 4 times 2 is 8, -8. Or -2 times 2 is -4 times 2 is -8. So in this case, we did end up getting the same answer, but notice again, the way we're thinking about each of these problems is different. So bottom line, when you have negative signs involved with exponents, you need to ask yourself, is that negative sign grouped in with the number being raised to the power? If it is, that negative sign is multiplied however many times with the number that's being multiplied however many times. But if the negative sign is not a part of what is being raised to the power, there's no parentheses like this, that negative sign is kind of, out on the outside. It's like -1 times everything. And you saw that in the first and fourth examples. Stay tuned for the latter part of this video where I'm going to go over how to evaluate algebraic expressions with negative numbers. And here we are on the other side of the video about to evaluate expressions, each of the expressions, for b equals -3. The main idea in this is that you recognize that when you replace a variable with the number that is equal to that variable, that you are literally doing everything to that number that the variable was having done to it. Okay, what does that mean? Let me show you. A way to recognize that is by looking at this, as I've shown you before, as an empty holding tank with parentheses. So that's an empty spot called b that we're squaring, right? We're squaring everything that gets evaluated in there. B is -3. So we replace this empty spot b with -3. Those parentheses will help you to remember every time the operation you need to do. So you get -3 squared. Well, that's -3 times -3, as we saw a similar problem earlier in this video, which is equal to 9. Now, if you don't have the parentheses there, this is what happens. You end up with -3 squared. And if you write it like that without the parentheses, you're actually communicating that you're multiplying the 3 by itself twice, but that the negative does not get multiplied twice, which is not what is being done to be there. So be very, very careful. Parentheses all the time when evaluating. B cubed, we'll use the same idea. We're going to cube everything that is b, so I evaluate -3 in for the b spot. Negative 3 cubed is, all of it is being multiplied. Negative 3 times negative 3 times negative 3. Negative 3 times negative 3 is 9. Times negative 3 is negative 27. There we have it, and that's our final answer. All right, let's look at number 3. Number 3 says the opposite of b squared. Now in this case, we've got the opposite of, and then everything that is b is being squared. That's different than this first problem that we did there. The opposite value is not a part of the parentheses. So we evaluate in negative 3 and use our order of operations. We're going to square out negative 3, which is 9. So that's going to be the opposite of 9. And whoa, hey, there's our answer. That negative sign is this just being brought down. Negative 3 squared, if you want to do this out, is really minus and then negative 3 times negative 3. That is what could also be written out. Negative 3 times negative 3 is 9. Times a negative 1, or the opposite of that is negative 9. Cool stuff. Last but not least, we have the opposite of b cubed. In this case, the opposite of b is in the parentheses. So I'm going to write it like this. We've got your parentheses cubed. The opposite sign comes down from there, and then we've got minus 3 that we're plugging in. So you've got the opposite of minus 3, which is going to be 3. And then you're going to cube it. And that's 3 times 3 times 3, which is 9. Times 3, or 27. Now technically we could have put parentheses here to kind of segue or segment off the negative signs right there. I didn't want to confuse you with too many parentheses, so I did it a little informally. That's all, peeps. Very cool. Negative signs with exponents.